Hello, and welcome back to my channel. Or if you're new here, welcome to my channel. Today, as promised, I'm going to be briefly discussing my plans for writing in this coming year. My previous video was about general channel plans and such for this year, and so anyway, let's just get down with it. First of all, my major 2023 writing plan, which I'm currently in process of and started different times during last year. I unfortunately put it on hiatus for several reasons, but anyway, I'm getting back to the radical rewrite and restructuring of the book formerly known as The Very Last, which is the third of my Atlantic City prequel series. I actually wrote it after the first books, but I call it my prequel series because it happens before the events of the other books, and it's obviously coming out way before them, so I guess it's technically not really a prequel anymore. And so anyway, it has had a new and improved secret title for many years now. I can't remember when exactly I came up with it, but it's based off of a line in one of Charlie Chaplin's sound films. It's not the Great Dictator, not the most famous one you might think of, and I'm not going to give any other clues but that, but I'm really looking forward to revealing the title. And so basically, anyway, I just mostly have to get down with writing a lot of new plan chapters for this book, which weren't a part of my plan when I was going back to do the radical rewrite for the first time in 2015, and again put it on hiatus. Actually, the reason I've mentioned I mostly put it on hiatus, one, I was really not looking forward to doing research and writing about the 1939 through 40 World's Fair in Queens, New York all over again. It wasn't that I didn't like, writing about it and researching it. It's just do I have to do this so soon afterwards? It's, kind of gonna feel stale and kind of dreading it because I'm not coming into it with fresh, exciting new eyes. And the second I had planned, now I have, deleted it, just moved it into odds and sods, a file of discarded material about the Portuguese world exposition of 1940, which some of the European characters tour before they come to America and link up with the other characters. Their storylines have already been entwined since the second book. And it was only, I believe, 494 words I had gotten total in this chapter, and I basically put it to the side for so long. I was kind of frustrated and annoyed. I just couldn't find more detailed information about that, and I did finally, I believe it was last year, I found a lot more detailed information about it, and so I said, oh great, now I can finally go back and write it properly. But then when I'm going through the several pages of notes I wrote in this little book, this is where I wrote my chapter notes and all sorts of other details about historical and religious and cultural things, and just about the town and characters and such for the third and the fourth book series. I realized this isn't really detailed about the exhibits or just exactly what all the kinds of artwork or what was in the children's playground or the amusement park. It's more detailing the actual architecture and the outer look of what the pavilions looked like, and just some of the statues and such, the names of the pavilions, maybe a little details here and there, but just not nearly the wealth of information that you could get about the World's Fair in New York City. And I did find some sources in Portuguese and stuff, and auto translated them through Google, and that was where I got this information. But still, that was not nearly enough information. I just realized really screw this, just get it out of here already. It really doesn't contribute anything. It was just kind of an excuse to write about the 1940 Portuguese world exposition, because not a lot of books have that. And I thought, oh, this would be cool, something new and unusual, but it contributes absolutely nothing either, storyline or character development. So just move it aside, and then the characters who visited when they immigrate and are with the Filliards, the main family in this series, they can just maybe say a little bit about what they did and what they saw and things like that, instead of not really needing to do a whole thing about that. And so that's really a huge weight off my mind. And so basically now I'm working on the chapters where Sini, the main character of the prequel series, her real name is Cinnamon. She goes by Sini for short. She's doing 5 weeks of birthday vacation, Long Island, Coney Island, and again the World's Fair, and finally New York City. And she and lots of her friends are coming along for this. They got a big bonus from her father for the birthday vacation. That's a long story, and so they're just having so much fun doing all this exploring of the World's Fair and the amusement parks and going to the beach and such. And so that's obviously really fun, and obviously the great hotels which they're going to. And there's also a triple Simha celebration wedding with her best friend Sparky, real name Catherine. Some of her relatives have come to America, and they're having a bar mitzvah, a bat mitzvah, and a religious wedding after a secular wedding between one of the couples. And so I'm really looking forward to that. I'm sorry if I'm rambling, but that's just really interesting, fun stuff I'm looking forward to. And I can't really reveal too much about what happens in the second half of the book, because that would give away major spoilers. But there are a lot of really big changes in Sini's life. But I can say, for example, the second half of the book there are like Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, Halloween. Like there's a big birthday season. Most of Sini's, well, I wouldn't say like most, but like a big percentage of Sini's friends are born in like very like late November and like mostly through December. So they like all have these like pretty much like back to back birthdays all throughout the months of December, and like all sorts of like other little things. Like for example, her family is starting a garden and getting a few like animals like chickens and goats and such, so they can save money with like growing their own food and like milking it and such like that. And she's also like doing an investigation of a fire that happened. This wasn't really handled well. It was kind of like a throwaway storyline in the original. I mean, it's not like a main thing in the rewrite either, but I'm just like drawing it out like a little bit more instead of just like mentioning and then like it's never heard again, when this is like a really big deal. This like she suspects her frenemy Adeline's father, Frank Myers, who is in the KKK. He's the one who set the fire, and like the other people believe he did too, and she's just trying to like bring him to justice, like prove he's the guilty party. And like and of course the Jewish high holidays are also in the second half of the book, and just like all sorts of like really like fun things. I'm looking forward to writing about this. Now, I have learned my lesson about, rushing through a book, like to set, an arbitrary date. It has to be done by this, but one of the prizes for winning Nano 2022 was free title setup at Ingram Spark, and the code is good through the 15th of March, so hopefully I don't really have much more to do with it. I really think I can get it done by March. And there are a couple of, like, a few, like, maybe 3 or 4, like, earlier chapters that I need to go back to and, like, rewrite properly. The rewrites I did in 2015, they still weren't really, good enough, but I'm not going to bother with them now. Just like set them aside for like I have like the original version file plus the new version, and like the copy and like duplicate it and make it the final version and do all the like final edits there, and then like put it in like the formatting, choosing like the trim size and the margins, and obviously you have to do the book cover. And too, if if I'm not like prepared, like completely polished or not, or like good enough, and just can make like the final like odds and sods of edits when I'm proofing the copy for like free changes and such like that, it's fine. But I really would like to have it finished by the 15th of March so I can get that free title set up. That would be just wonderful. Like finally get this out of my hair. I've been like putting off doing the rewrite for so long, and then after I finish that, I will go back to the radical rewrite of the 4th and final book in the prequel series. Its working title, I still don't have any new titles. I'm secret or not. I'm almost as an afterthought. The first 6 months of 1941, and the title really does indicate it was kind of an afterthought, because like all along I had only intended 3 books in this series, but this turned out as a surprise. And I started doing this during NaNoWriMo, and I came to feel like I do still stand by all my like decisions and thought processes, which I walked through in a video back in I believe October, about why I was choosing this to work on and why I was choosing not to work on certain other projects on my like to-do queue. But I felt like, I shouldn't have done this before I like finished like the very last, because, I was coming to it without the context of the completed story. I mean, obviously I like know generally, what happens in the like the second half of the book, particularly because obviously I wrote the like rough draft all those years ago and like started doing the rewrite, and I just like generally, like, as I have an elephantine memory, like, oh, this happens and that happens and these are these like major changes, but I don't really know because I didn't complete the book to have like coming to it with like the full context. Like, for example, when you've put a project on hiatus for a while, sometimes you're just like not familiar with it, like you like forget, oh, this happened then, and like so you don't like make an embarrassing mistake and accidentally like contradict yourself or like forget about a important character or plot development. So you kind of have to like not necessarily like read all the way through, but at least like skim thoughtfully through what you've read so like you can get back up to speed. And so anyway, I will be getting back to almost as an afterthought after I finish the very last. And again, that's set during the first 6 months of 1941, and the major storylines are about Sini wanting to attend her school's progressive track when she starts junior high in the fall. Yes, I did decide to finally like up the ages of her Sini and her friends by 2 years. I like went like agonized over this for like must have been like at least 12 years. I was thinking about that, and I should do a future video like talking about my thought processes for that, and like why I finally decided and why I was like on the fence and like just emotionally attached to their original age, even though like it had no longer like seemed to make sense for so many reasons. But anyway, she is starting to feel like seeds have been planted in the second book, and like they become stronger in the third, and like she's finding like I really want a better life for myself in the progressive track in my school. It just seems like it would be a great fit for me, and I want to bring as many of my friends along as possible, and like some of her friends get inspired to go to, and like, you know, see, she does have a number of like, you know, rich friends. Her parents can easily afford it, but some of her friends are just, you know, like poor and working class or lower middle class, and so they need to like apply for the scholarships so they can hopefully get into. And she just, you know, wants her friends to stay together forever because they've been through so much together. And like Sini's mother and her friend Kit's mother, they're like so antagonistic, like, oh, just like stay in the general track, don't get above your raising, you're just a girl, why do you want to like go to college or get like a progressive education, and just things like that. And they're trying to convince their mothers before time runs out. And just like, so a lot of like, you know, the different holidays throughout the book, like the Jewish holidays and like the Christian, like, you know, Easter and just like things like that. And like her friend Laura is having her confirmation, and there's like the book starts with a skiing holiday. It was originally slated for the Berkshires, but I decided to move it up near Bennington, Vermont. That was just like more of a larger Jewish community. It would be like a large, like, you know, Jewish resort, because Sini's father, her friend Kit's father, Mr. Green, who was like taking her and like Kit and several of their other friends, like he has very moral principles. He won't stay at like a hotel that excludes people. And unfortunately, like in this era, there was like, oh, we don't have any like, you know, Jewish or like black people staying at our business. Or sometimes it was even like, oh, if you're not a WASP or you're not a certain income level, like they might even, you know, exclude like, you know, Catholics or people of, you know, like Eastern or Southern or like Central European descent. But anyway, so that was like just made more sense because there was a larger Jewish population near Bennington. There was in the Berkshires, and I really did enjoy writing those chapters to date. But during Nano, I began writing out of order, you know, because it just like wasn't coming, and I always had to do like a little more research for some of these chapters. And I do have a future video planned about my Nano experience, and you know what I learned and what I will, you know, do next time. But you know, I did thankfully win Nano with 62,000 words. Like a fair percentage of that, I would say, was from creative nonfiction, and some of it came from, you know, again, well, I really made this like big discovery. I was a big reason my writing process had like, you know, kind of slowed to a big halt. It wasn't just lockdown wrecking my mental health, although that like certainly had a big part in it. It was just like I couldn't turn off my editor mode because I had become more used to like, you know, editing and polishing books like during lockdown, and even like for I guess the 2 years before that. So it was just like more familiar, and I had kind of, you know, like lost the spirit of, you know, just like joyfully typing like the chutzpahdik attitude. Oh, this is all pure gold and nothing could be horrible. Like, why would I remove any of these like precious, saintly, holy, golden words? And then like when you start editing a few months or so later, sometimes longer, like, oh, this is kind of crap. Like, this doesn't make any sense. This is kind of, you know, like cluttery, or this might make sense in a different book, or maybe I can like keep this in mind for like character development or backstory, but it doesn't really belong here. And so anyway, like that, I really need to get back. I am starting to slowly get back to just like typing, you know, as it naturally comes to me, like obviously not being like sloppy or thoughtless, but you know, just like get it all out there on the page first, and then like after you're done and like you've set it aside for all and you get back to it, you can start separating the wheat from the chaff, like see, oh, this is crap and this isn't good, and like just, you know, things like that. And I really need to have a better mindset with like editing and writing like that. But thankfully I am finally getting back to like a healthier, like normal way of writing with like joy from the heart. And in the last few days, you know, I've just like been like hungry to get back to my alternative history about Dante and Beatrice. I might even like, you know, push off doing the finishing the rewrite of almost as an afterthought to get back to my alternative history, because I just like I'm so like eager to finally, you know, get back to it. Like a seed was just, you know, planted in me. I just like really want to get back to this like project of the heart. I put it on, you know, like hiatus for various reasons. Like ironically, like I don't know if ironically is like the best word. Like in the chapter I think 21 and chapter 6, I, you know, got to like a wall, like because those were the Christmas chapters, and obviously when you're like writing a modern Christmas chapter or scene, it's not really that hard. Like you basically know how Christmas is celebrated, and you might just need to do a little like research. Like if, for example, if it's like a different culture, obviously they would like, you know, celebrate Christmas differently, like in like Brazil or like Russia or just like different places all around the world. But in the Middle Ages, it's like a lot more difficult. They didn't just have, you know, like Christmas Eve and Christmas Day. They had the 12 days of Christmas, and they had all sorts of different, you know, like celebrations and things associated with each particular day, and all sorts of like different parties and different things, like depending on where you were in the Middle Ages, and like things about like songs that, you know, might have existed in that era, and like the foods they were eating. And so it's like a lot more difficult and research like heavy than just like basically like within the last like 100-200 years writing about Christmas. And I was kind of frustrated about that, like figuring out how to incorporate my research, like, oh, what should I include or what shouldn't I include? Maybe I could include like this like tidbit of historical detail in like a different Christmas chapter, but not in this. Like, what can I, leave out, and like what do I really need to do like important in this chapter. But anyway, I'm so eager to get just back to this story, particularly because it's been like a passion project for like so many years. I first came up with it in the spring of 2004, and this is a little notebook which I've been using to do like my research about like the Middle Ages and just like other things like that about like the story and the fictional to me characters or like the real life characters in the story. I'm doing like all sorts of like medieval food and like again as I said, medieval Christmas, like medieval clothing, just like medieval schooling, just all sorts of things about the Middle Ages. And I really am so I'm sorry I'm rambling. I just cannot wait to get back to this book already. And this is the working synopsis of my alternative history, which I came up with around the time I had like finally started like writing this book already. What if one of the most famous love stories in history, Portinari, meet as children on May Day 1274? They're instantly drawn to one another with a strong, precocious love, which increases as they get older. Their dreams of marriage come to an abrupt end when their fathers arrange their betrothals to other people, but an unexpected second chance comes when they're both widowed in their early 20s. This happy life is torn asunder in 1301 when black Guelphs violently seize control of Fiorenza. While Dante is getting his 3 daughters into a flight-ready carriage, his little sister Gaetana runs into the courtyard and says her newlywed husband was just murdered, and Tana is also pregnant at this time as well. By the time Dante goes back into the house, Beatrice and their youngest child Brunetto have mysteriously disappeared, and the increasing danger makes it impossible to search for them. Dante receives a letter stating his pregnant wife and only son will be held as hostages unless he buys their freedom with an exorbitant ransom. The Black Guelphs also demand he return to Fiorenza to be tried on numerous false charges. He begins planning a recapture of the city with other white Guelphs, but none of their plans come to fruition due to bickering and treachery, and Dante has the additional responsibility of protecting his daughters and sister and his sister's newborn baby eventually. When Dante fails to appear in court, he's sentenced to exile. If he's caught in Fiorenza, he'll be burnt at the stake. Shortly on the heels of this nightmarish development, he receives a letter claiming Beatrice and Brunetto are dead. During this darkest night of his soul, Dante begins writing a long epic poem in which he imagines Beatrice reaching out to him from beyond the grave to save him through an otherworldly journey. But as his oldest daughter Gabriella, named after his mother, insists, the only evidence Beatrice and Brunetto are dead is the word of their untrustworthy enemies. A reunion in happily ever after could be destined for this lifetime, not paradise. And part of my writing plans for 2023 also include the blog posts I'm going to be doing, and some of them will include a series on the Who's album Quadrophenia, which turns 50 this year. I'm so excited and happy and like overjoyed. I finally get to write like a full like review about it and my thoughts about it. I mean, yeah, because I love it so much. I have written numerous blog posts about it over the year, but like never got around to actually doing a proper like review and historical analysis and like a full like recapping of like what it means to me and like my emotional journey and history with the album. So I'm really looking forward to that. This album means so much to me. I highly recommend it to you guys, and it's like really helped me through so many tough times. I love the album All Things Must Pass too. That's a very close number 2, but like Quadrophenia will always be my absolute number 1. And I'm also going to be doing film reviews of every year since 2015 I've been doing like film reviews of films with landmark anniversaries in the year. And so this year I'll be doing the original 10 Commandments from 1923. I was lucky enough to see that on the big screen during a Cecil B. DeMille Film Festival, and I still lived in Albany. Most of the films were shot in a local indie theater, but like the first night was at a local church, which was like kind enough to lend their beautiful sanctuary, and there were 2 guys behind the screen doing live music for us. That was like a wonderful, special, wonderful experience. And I'll also be doing Quo Vadis from 1913, The Last Days of Pompeii from 1913, and Life of an American Fireman from 1903. And plus, I haven't really like decided or made the list yet, a whole bunch of classic horror films with landmark anniversaries in October. I absolutely love classic horror films. Like every October I like do like a review of and like talking about like classic horror films with landmark anniversaries, and sometimes there are so many to cover, even like leak over into early November, but you can never have too much Halloween or too many like celebrating horror films. And also as I mentioned a few more Dantean posts, which I will be tuning into videos as well, the history of Divine Comedy translations into worldwide languages, and I previous did a post and a video about the history of its translation into English. And I'll finally be doing my part 2 of Contrapassa, which is a punishment or a penance reminding one of the sin committed in life in the Divine Comedy, and the part 2 would cover Purgatorio, my part 1 video in post was about Inferno, and I would like to do videos and blog posts about the Divine Comedy. I've obviously done 2 previously, the 2 in 1911 L'Inferno films, but I will be doing like several other films, like mostly from the silent era as far as I'm like aware of, but I believe there might be some sound films as well, which I would just love to cover about the Divine Comedy and Dante's own life. A series about writing about corsets and historical fiction and debunking persistent myths about this very misunderstood garment. It's like until I guess a few years ago, I too believed they were these like torture devices akin to like Chinese foot binding, and like, oh, women's organs were getting like displaced and they were like, breaking ribs and like constantly fainting. Like a very, very small minority of women like did tight lace and like sleep in their corsets and like make their daughters start like, corseting since they were like 4 or 5 years old. But that was a tiny minority, like, and people looked on them as like goofy and like foolish and dangerous and bizarre. That was not like celebrated or commonplace at all. Like most women, it was just like a matter of fact garment they wore for like support. Like, why wouldn't you wear a corset? It's just like such an important part of your life, and it's not like it was like crushing your organs or bones. And I'm really looking forward to writing this series, and as well as like blog posts about breaching, long pants, and little boys wearing dresses in historical fiction. I mean, a lot of people now, they might like be confused, like, oh, why would like a boy be excited about wearing long pants? Wouldn't he have been doing that already? Like, no, that was like a big like rite of passage when a boy was a teenager. He would go from like little boy to a young man when like he stopped wearing like knee-length trousers and like were starting like actual long pants. Like little boys, they would like wear dresses until like the age varied, like sometimes like 3, sometimes 6 or whatever, and they would get their first pair of breeches. And that was another really like special, momentous coming of age celebration. And as well as writing blog posts about menarche and dysmenorrhea. Like guys might not be so interested in that because that's like such a like womanly process, but you can like, I guess you can read them if you're interested. It's just like something that's really important to do in your books if you have female characters going through that stuff. And a series about writing about Jewish denominations like history, theology, etc. The distinction between the words woman and lady in historical fiction, like, believe it or not, that's like really important. Like, like, oh, some people would say like, oh, you don't want to be a woman, you want to aspire to be a lady. Or like, why would I want to be a lady? Because a woman has so much more fun. And then like, dame, like some women, I mean, I personally wouldn't mind being called a dame, because like a dame has so much more fun than like a prim and proper lady just like sitting in her like cloistered castle, but obviously like broad. That's like so insulting, and like some women would be insulted if you called them a dame as well. Oh, we'll have fun getting into that blog post. I might turn that into a video. And behind the scenes is my list of silent films seen, like for example what I count as a silent film. Like some films made beyond the silent era, like was it like made as like a deliberate modern silent, or was it like deliberately like an avant-garde film that just like has no sound but has music, like just things to consider like that, beyond just like, oh, it's in the silent era. Like sometimes you have to look at films that were made like as silence or like quasi-silence beyond that, and like the pertinent information to include in parentheses. Like for example, if it has a synchronized soundtrack, or like very like limited dialogue, or like synchronized like sound effects, stuff like that, and how and when I started my list, etc. I'm almost at 1,300 silence. Like it would be great if I could finally get to that next milestone by the end of the year, and then after that the next milestone would be 1,500. I absolutely love silent films so much. And I also want to do blog post about the 100th anniversary of Rudy Valentino's Mineral Lava dance tour, which he and his second wife Natasha Rambova did while he was on strike from acting. He was on strike from movies for almost 2 years, which like that was kind of almost like like a death sentence for your career, like particularly back in those days. But he managed to like come back and do some great films in the the last few years of his life before he unfortunately was taken away from the world. Thank you very much for watching. Please don't forget to subscribe and like and comment, particularly comment. I love seeing comments from you guys, and hit the notification bell, and I will be back soon. Maybe I will be doing my final tag, which I have to get up in with the traveling with books tag, and I'm also planning in very near future to the lessons learned from Nano 2023, and also showing the books I'm doing for like historical nonfiction readathon about prehistory for the first 3 months. I absolutely love prehistory, one of my absolute passions, and it really means a lot to me when you guys show support through like commenting and watching my videos. And I will see you again very soon. Bye.